What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here. Mentioned it in yesterday's video, Beckett has joined the parade of grading companies rolling out some sort of either permanent price change or a special, basically some sort of cost reduction in their services. CSG and Beckett have rolled out what they are deeming special/sales. SGC and PSA have just rolled out what they're basically claiming their new permanent pricing, except for PSA through one little like, hey, this is kind of a special with their $15 TCG thing. We haven't talked a ton about Beckett recently in any particular breakout videos or anything like that, but they hopped on the price reduction game and we did a video on the other three companies. So let's go ahead and break down Beckett's. So this is on their Instagram page, $18 per card for single grade only. I was a little confused by what single grade only meant, but essentially what that means is no subgrades and $20 per card or $20 card minimum per order. And then you get a little bit of a discount if you're sending 40 cards and then 45 to 90 day turnaround time. And then they also have a premium service, $200 a card with subgrades and $150 a card with no subgrades, 2 to 7 day turnaround time. Let's pop over and look at Beckett's website and then give some just general commentary here for what their normal pricing is without these specials. Express is $100 a card, 20 day turnaround, 10 to 20 day turnaround. Express, no subgrades, $75, 10 to 20 days. Standard, $50 a card, 20 to 30 days. No subgrades, $40 a card. Economy, $35, 30 to 60 business days with subgrades. And then $25 a card without subgrades. So essentially a $50 or a $10 increase across the board on most of these. You can see economy subgrade, no subgrades to subgrades is a $10 increase. Standard is a $10 increase. Express is a $25 increase. And then premium is a $50 increase. And then the new thing with no subgrades at all, the single grade only, basically just a bulk order. Okay. I thought about this one for a little bit. I'm a little perplexed here. It's interesting that they're pushing as, their big special as an order with no subgrades on it. To me, this just feels a little bit like a mistake. I would be doubling down on subgrades. You're the only company that still offers them. A lot of people really, really like them. Having your main special be pricing for no subgrades on an order, to me, looks a little odd. In addition to that, this premium, why does it jump? It's $10 for economy, standard to add subgrades on. Why does it then jump $25 for express to add subgrades on? And then why is it $50 on premium to add subgrades is $50. $150 no subgrades, $50 with subgrades. All you're doing different, I don't know. I don't know a look behind the scenes. Is adding on 4 little things at the bottom of the slip, right? You're grading all 4 of those things to assign a numerical grade no matter what, unless the card is being graded differently if there's subgrades or not. If you want to have a minimal fee on there for subgrades, I get it. $5-10, sure, whatever. We got to print some extra stuff on there, whatever the case might be. So you want to have a small fee tacked onto there, I guess it's okay. But why does it jump so much as you move up to express and premium? If it was me, if I was sitting there, I wouldn't even offer non-subgrades anymore. Everything would be subgrades. I would build it into my price, and I would be offering things like this, not this. I'd be at like $20 a card with subgrades. Why, if you could do $18 a card with no subgrades, and you have to evaluate all four of those things when you're grading the card anyways, because if you're assigning it a 9.5, you're getting to that number somehow. I assume the process is the same if you're putting subgrades on the card versus not putting subgrades on the card. I would hope so. I would hope the card is not being graded differently if you're paying for subgrades versus not. It should just be the extra step of printing it on the label. And I'm not trying to be extra hard on Beckett. I like the Beckett case. Some of my best cards are in Beckett slabs, but I just don't get what they're going for here with this kind of leading the charge with a no subgrade order and then having a pretty hefty premium on this premium thing for $50. And then, I mean, let's really, if you really want to dig into this here for a second, Beckett is charging basically $200 with subgrades. Because let's be honest, a Beckett card with no subgrades on it, most people don't want. They typically sell for less. So I don't even really look at, unless it's a card I absolutely have to have. Like my Jim Brown Sign of the Times does not have BGS subgrades on it, but I just really wanted the card. It was an 8.5. It was basically being treated as raw anyway, or slightly above. But for anything major, you want subgrades on it. So $200 for 2 to 7 day business turnaround time on a Beckett premium, a BGS 9.5 and an SGC 10 sell within 10 to 15% of each other. Sometimes the SGC 10 outsells a BGS 9.5. Sometimes it's the other way around, but it's very close in where those cards comp out at. I can send to SGC on my own, just a single card at what, like $22 a card. I don't have the new pricing memorized in my head yet. For low $20 per card and get it back in 10 business days. Or I could send it to Beckett and pay $200 a card for 2 to 7 business day turnaround time. That just, even at Express at $100 a card with subgrades. 10 to 20 business day turnaround time. I can send it to SGC for 22 and get it back faster, and it'll sell for about the same. Once again, it's depending on the card, it's relatively negligible. Like I said, some things will sell for a little bit more, some things will sell for a little bit less. Standard is $50 per card. So when you get into the lower end things, and once again, I'm looking at Beckett only with subgrades. It doesn't make sense to grade with him and not get subgrades on the card, unless it's like ultra low end stuff. And even then, if you're talking about this $18 per card with no subgrades on it, I know Beckett outsells, but if you're looking at this, you're looking at extremely low end stuff. I would just send the CSG, which is $12 a card right now. That's $6 less per card on a 20 card order. I just don't know where they're going with this. I don't know if they just don't have the ability to get as cheap as everyone else, if they don't want to necessarily compete solely based on price. But when you look at all these numbers and lay everything out, I don't know what the use case is for, when you run through these different pricing tiers, at what point in time, unless, once again, if you're a Beckett diehard, none of this matters to you. You're sending to them regardless what pricing is on this stuff. But if you're just grading a flip or whatever, and you want, one of the more convenient or easier ways to do this, I don't know at what level you're going to choose this over SGC in this instance. Let's pull up PSA's prices really quick here and kind of do a little bit of a side by side. We were talking about SGC because once again, SGC is, low 20s per card. Send it off, get it back within about a week or two. Very comparable to a lot of these. On this Beckett one, you're talking about $18 per card, minimum 20 cards, and a 45 to 90 day wait. you could send through an SGC group submitter at $18 a card and get it back in probably 2 to 3 weeks. And that's, obviously no subgrades, but once again, an SGC 10 versus a BGS 9.5 with no subgrades, an SGC 10 is going to outsell that all day long. Let alone, now, here is where Beckett does have an advantage along with SGC. We're going to start talking about PSA here in a second, is there's no declared value on any of this stuff. So that is one thing to factor in. But with the comparison to SGC, keep in mind, SGC does not have declared value on anything modern / ultra modern. I think it's anything 2001 or newer. I could have the exact year on that wrong, but they don't charge declared value on any modern, ultra modern stuff, basically. So that's a very apples to apples comparison on the SGC pricing versus the BGS pricing or Beckett pricing. When we look at PSA, declared value comes into play, and that's where it could swing things a little bit. So let's say you have a higher end card, maybe a $2,000 card. With PSA, you're going to have to send that express at $150 per card. Estimated turnaround time is 14 days. With Beckett, it's $200 per card with subgrades, 2 to 7 business day turnaround time. Okay, so now we're at least in the realm of being close together. $50 per card less on the PSA order, but you have to wait an estimated extra week. Once again, I don't know where they're sitting at currently on express orders. I haven't sent anything express in a long time. So essentially, you're paying a $50 premium to get it back a week faster on paper with Beckett. However, as we all know, a PSA 10 outsells a BGS 9.5 by a decent portion. You're probably talking about 40% in most cases. So is the extra week worth paying $50 more with Beckett for it to sell for potentially 30 to 40% less? So maybe the more fair comparison here is looking at Express with Beckett, which is $100 per card, 10 to 20 day business turnaround time. You're going to save $50 per card. You're probably going to get it back a little bit slower than the PSA version, but you save $50 per card. So maybe depending on what the card comps at, if that $50 swings it drastically one way or the other, and you think you could have a better chance at squeaking out a 9.5 versus a PSA 10 versus a PSA 9, maybe at that point in time, then the Beckett conversation comes into play. But it's really going to depend on the card and what it values out at. My gut probably says, without looking at a specific example, just macro level, broadly speaking, is that I'm probably, depending on what I'm sending, unless it's like an RPA or something like that, or a thicker card, I am probably going to lean towards sending it to PSA and roll the dice on getting the PSA 10 if I think it's clean, and maximizing the value on it and just spending the extra $50 on the grading fee for a card around that price. Now, maybe on the ultra high end, it starts to make more of a difference. Super Express with PSA on a 5K card is $300, and you're going to get that back in a week. Now you're talking Beckett's premium at $200 per card, 2 to 7 day turnaround time. But once again, you're taking about a 30 to 40% haircut on the secondary market on that. So it kind of circles back to those same things that we always talk about with Beckett. If it's an RPA, a thicker card, flawless, NT, whatever, in that case, because PSA tends to grade those a little tougher, you might be better off to send that to Beckett. And if you don't need it back super quick, you could just send it at a slower turnaround time and save even more on the grading fee. And maybe you squeak out that BGS 9.5 min gem or something like that. And it ends up equating out to being better than what it could if at PSA 9. The thicker stuff could be a little bit tricky with PSA. So I didn't want to go too far down the rabbit hole in a bunch of comparisons without having comps handy, but just kind of wanted to throw a couple different things out there. So you can make some arguments with their pricing versus PSA in some very niche markets, but broadly speaking, on the low end, and that's mostly on the high end, on the low end, I don't know that it really makes sense. You're talking about $18 a card with no subgrades. There is no way I am sending stuff to Beckett at $18 per card with a 45 to 90 day turnaround time with no subgrades when I could send it to PSA for $18 a card bulk. Now, To be fair, PSA caps you with a $200 declared value. Beckett does not. So you can play a little fast and loose with that. My problem here is the no subgrades. If I am, like I said before and early in this video, if I am Beckett, I am tripling down on subgrades, not moving away from it. Figure out a way to make the subgrade pricing in line with everything else, and figure out a way. Just go away from those subgrades. I would not even allow it as an option. Just get it out of there. Make your pricing more streamlined, easier to look at. It's all straightforward. Everything comes with a subgrade. There's no non-subgrade option, and just build it into your pricing. And then, like I said, I don't know why there's a $50 bump here on premium just to print stuff on the card. You're doing the same process that you're doing here on Express, but it's a $25 increase. And then on your lower ends, it's only a $10 increase. And once again, I don't know. I'm not a Beckett grader. I don't work there. What other costs are involved for Beckett beyond just printing it on the label? It really shouldn't take that much extra time. Sure, you have, and who is me to say I'm sitting here behind my desk at home. I'm not sitting in a grading room. But in my mind, it's, hey, we're evaluating this card. This is what I think that it has. Here's the grades that we're using to determine what the overall grade is. The only extra steps would be documenting that and then putting it into the machine that prints the flip and having it print on there and sticking it in the card. Sure, maybe that's a couple extra dollars in labor. Just build that into your cost and get rid of the no subgrade option altogether. I would love to know their numbers on what they are currently grading subgrades versus no subgrades, because when you're in the wild, at least on older cards that you look at, a vast majority of them have subgrades. Just lean into it. Just lean into it. That's the one thing that differentiates you from everybody else. You should be pushing that to the front. I do like the fact that they have no declared value. That is really, really nice. There's no membership required, anything like that. That's cool too with PSA. Obviously, you need Collectors Club membership for the bulk pricing and all that. But if I'm Beckett, lean into the subgrade pricing. When you compare them versus PSA, there's some use cases here. When you compare them versus SGC, which basically resell for about the same amount of money, I don't know what, if I'm just grading a flip, I don't know that I could justify a lot of cards going Beckett's way when I can send them to SGC. And I'm, once again, I like SGC for some things. I don't like them for everything. They sell pretty close together. I prefer a Beckett slab over an SGC slab 10 times out of 10. 100%. I'm taking a BGS slab, Beckett slab over SGC pretty much every time on modern / ultra modern. Vintage, different story. I do like the way the vintage looks in an SGC slab. But when you compare those two together and then you throw in the CSG angle with like low dollar bulk and stuff like that, on the lower end side, I don't know that it makes a ton of sense for Beckett. And maybe that's the game that they're trying to play. Maybe they just want to target mid to high end cards. And when you start doing that comparison versus PSA, you could start making some arguments depending on the type of card. I don't know. Curious for your thoughts and comments down below on this one. That is Beckett's new pricing. Please let me know what you think. We will catch you guys and girls on the next one. Peace.